first gig I did with them was the Tivoli in Copenhagen. With 3,000 seats sold out. I didn't know this. Out of the airport there was me and John and Luke and no Barney. He missed the plane anyway, I'll cut straight through that. He was asleep in his car out of the Five Lamps. When we did the first half, we kept getting messages he was making his way via Paris. And he made it for the second half. And stole the show, of course, you know. It's actually very funny, and Barney doesn't mind me telling Barney stories at all. But you're probably familiar with the genre, I'm sure you've heard many of them. But after the show, like, nerves and everything had set in. The show was a great success. But, you know, the reaction had set in, the terror. And there was no noise at all in the dressing room. All you could hear was zip, being click, you know, total silence, icicles growing everywhere. And Barney was looking at everybody over his glasses. He knew he was in the doghouse. And Barney had this idea of carrying on a conversation in his own mind with your answers and everything, without sharing it with the rest of us audibly for a good while. And obviously this was going quite well, this conversation. So after about 15 minutes of silence, like, the promoter came in and went, oops, and went out again, you know. After about 15 minutes, it seemed like, of this silence, Barney suddenly said, "Oh, what are you all talking about?" And I could sort of feel myself starting to grin, you know. That's unbelievable. And John, I think it was, gave him a bit of a mouthful, you know, that he was putting us through that, you know, Jim's first night and everything. And, you know, Barney, being the total diplomat, poured oil on troubled water. He said, "Sure, didn't I steal the second half?" Which made it all right. And he had a kicker. He wasn't finished with this. This was unbelievable. Like, I had three great Barney ones as well as everything else of my experience the first night. There was another bit of a silence, and he suddenly came up with the kicker, the clincher. And he turned around to me and he says, "Anyway, if there hadn't been an hour's time difference between Dublin and Copenhagen, I'd have been in buckets of time."
The first time I went to Germany with them, I really couldn't believe it. I was astounded. Especially in Hamburg, the CCH, nearly 3,500 people. Beautiful auditorium, stuffed. Every really loving the Dubliners. It was an amazing feeling, it was.
I've been with them 7 years now. We do a gig in Hamburg, usually the last night of the German tour, which would normally be around the second week of December. And it holds maybe 3,500 people. And it's sold out from year to year. Like, I mean, the tickets are gone for the following year after the show. It's incredible. We were in Slovenia the other night, in Ljubljana, and it was an open air gig in a lovely little courtyard type of setup. But there was 2,500 people there in Ljubljana, like, and they were all people in their 20s. Like, it was amazing, and they were up jumping around to this music. It was just incredible.
I was only reflecting on this coming over on the journey, and it's just a marvel, really. Last week we were in Austria, in Vienna, and the great capitals of the world, and big theatres, and it's phenomenal, absolutely. When I think about it, sometimes I think it's not real. It's I think of all the places we've been to, and I'm only 20 years. The 20 years before that was wild. So I feel that I am quite privileged to be in the group, and it's been a great experience, and I hope it lasts a few more years.
It's a kind of a musical accident, I suppose. In the beginning there was Luke and Ronnie and Kieran and Barney. And there was this wonderful raw talent there. I mean, they were all unique individuals and each one had a unique talent to offer, and it was the combination of all these talents put together, I think, that created something absolutely new and something that people identified with. It's become an institution, I suppose, really, the Dubliners, and I must say I feel very lucky and privileged to have been around at the right time to become part of the whole thing.
I think it's it goes without saying that John and Barney are first-class musicians, and their approach and the presentation is down to earth. But apart from that, it's the music itself. It's tuneful and rhythmic, and the two together is a winning combination. It's like rock and roll, really, of the 50s. It was, irresistible.
The amazing thing about the Dubliners, I think, is that they seem to be, the cohesion seemed to be instinctive. Now, I don't know whether it was a happy accident. For instance, when Ronnie went, everybody presumed that's the end of the Dubliners. But I came in and it wasn't. We started doing it as well, if not better than ever. Same thing when I left. Sean Cannon, Paddy Riley, everybody. The Dubliners seemed to be greater than the whole of its parts.
When they hit the stage, it doesn't matter, I mean, the audience are never aware of the fact that, a minute before, Barney is in the toilet looking for his trousers or something. This never comes across when they get on stage. Barney's probably first out waving to the crowd. He looks like, Jesus, he's been there since 6 o'clock waiting to go on, which is not the case, believe me.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's not surreal. I think it's only at times I realise what a phenomenal success the band is, and the influence and the length of time the band has been going.
Maybe it's the way we all look, as if we don't give a damn, or, what you see is what you get. And what you see on stage, what you get off stage, it's the same thing, Maybe that's part of the attraction. Plus, now, I'd say in the last 10 years, we're getting a much younger audience, especially on the continent. And I think they're getting sick of all the techno stuff. And they're looking at these 5 men with kind of acoustic instruments. No gimmicks, no magic light shows. And what they're seeing is what they're hearing. I think that's part of the attraction.
I remember when I was young, Irish music was looked upon as being very, backward and weird, and especially in Dublin, it was sort of like, that's all stuff from the country. We don't want to know about that, And then Irish music itself, the people who played it, a lot of them presented it very, tied in with the Irish music was the sort of, with the pioneer pin and, the 1940s suit, and, don't, for God's sake, they had this word, they used to use it, it's very modern, That was a kind of a sin to be modern, And everything was jazz. It didn't matter whether it was rock and roll or, or country music, it was all jazz, Ferdinand jazz, and don't be playing that Ferdinand jazz. And it was very kind of puritanical, if you like. And I think with Barney playing the jigs and reels, and John playing, jigs and reels on the fiddle, I think it helped to break down that. And a lot of Dublin people thought, oh, geez, these are ordinary fellas. And they began to listen. Now, out of the whole audience, you probably got a lot of people who now don't come to see us, but they're more into the Irish music and in a different area.
I think we've contributed a lot to awakening people's interest in the folk music that was always there, songs that people learned at school, and they become hackneyed with kind of Irish tenor versions of them being the only versions known. And we came along and did them in our own unique style. And I suppose basically, in a sense, I think the Dubliners are all basically good buskers, because we've never gotten together and consciously came up with any, musical arrangement for any particular song. Quite often in the old days, Luke or Ronnie would come along and say, this is a new song, I'd like to do it soon. We try it out in the dressing room, and Barney and myself would pick up the banjo and fiddle and pick up the air and busk along. And we do it then maybe half an hour later on the stage, that kind of thing. But yeah, I suppose that's the main kind of contribution that we've made to awakening people's interest and the rich culture that's there,